Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Gensius, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 4 members, 4 questions, and 4 answers to each question. Each squad member generates a question that we all have to answer. Some of them silly, some of them sincere. Well, even the silly ones are sincere. Let's see who's with us on this episode, and just introduce yourself. I think we'll start with our new guest. Martin?
Hi, my name is Dr. Martin Wesley. Since we have 2 Martys, feel free to call me Wesley or Marty, or my middle name's Cortez. I don't care what you call me. That's fine. I'm with National Louis University. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
That is
Hi.
Stephanie's hand.
Hi, that's close up. Hi, I'm Steph Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mitch Conrad and a licensed professional counselor.
Well, we've got the group of the 4 of us, and we each have a question, and this is Martin's first time here, so we're going to have him start off with his question. What's your question for us?
Well, again, I guess I went for the silly first, but my question was, when you look back at your childhood, and some of us, that's a long ways back, what is a small memory that still makes you smile?
It's getting longer every day, further back. Well, I liked this question, and yeah. What came to mind first was a memory. I know the Swenson still exists, but it exists now more as like a drive-through or like a just a little shack kind of burger joint. When I was growing up, Swenson's was like a whole come in, sit down like restaurant, and they still had all ice cream. And I remember it must have been like 4 myself and getting an ice cream cone, and that thing happens where you go to lick it and the whole scoop falls off and goes plop on the floor. And I don't know, I didn't know what to make of it, but my dad came in and he was like, nope, let's go back. And I remember him asking like, hey, can we please have another scoop of ice cream there? And they did that, and I remember feeling like that was nice, like, he made it better. So,
Mitch?
Yeah. I like this question because it brings up a particular memory that I haven't thought about in a while. It has to do with baseball. When I was young, my birthday falls on in the summer, right around the cutoff point for when like either kids are like the oldest of their team or the youngest of their team. And I was always the youngest on my team. And sometimes I was playing with people who were like a foot taller than me. And it felt a bit weird. Just kind of the way that things go with baseball. And I didn't get a chance to really contribute too much to teams as I got older, and the age gap felt like it actually got more pronounced, even though it stayed the same. Just like kids hit, puberty a little bit before me, and I never really got a chance to contribute too much. But I do remember when I was still in middle school, probably like 5th grade or something like that, I got a chance to play center field in the playoffs, which was a bit unusual for me because I wasn't a center fielder. I typically played in right field, and center field is a harder position to play. And I remember that in the playoff game that we were playing in, it was late innings, and there was I think it was a runner on first, and it might have been a tie game at the time, or we might have been up by 1. I don't really remember the score. I just sort of remember the moment was a ball was hit out to me in the second to last inning, and I had to make this diving catch, and I'm not that great of a fielder. I always wanted to be a pitcher, and I usually played infield. I made this diving catch, threw it back in. The runner wasn't able to get home. From second, I think there was a tag up because I dove, but that was great. Saved a run. We got out of the inning. Then the next inning, the exact same thing happened, and I had to make a diving catch again. And I just remember like this was like my big sports moment from when I was a kid. Of like this is the thing that I think of. Like some people get to do it in the major leagues. I got to do it in fifth grade, where if I hadn't made that catch, goes behind, and we either are tied or we lose the game. So really fond memory of mine from sports, a sport I really love.
Mine goes to sort of the same thing that Mitch talked about. I grew up in Chicago, and if you've been to, in the city, what you have are most of the city's laid out in a grid pattern with 4 blocks east and west, and essentially 8 half blocks north and south. That's the boundary where the busy streets are. In between there are all small little side streets and intersections, all fitting in this lovely kind of grid. Well, we didn't have a park near us or ones that we would go and gather, although there are plenty of parks in Chicago. We would maybe sometimes go up to the school to play, but we just found it easier to play baseball at the end of the street, which meant if you're batting on one of the corners, like say the northeast corner, you have left field, and if you have enough players, you have right field. Basically, left field is the north-south street, right field is the east-west street. You have absolutely no center field because there is a 3-story walk-up apartment building. So we would play baseball at those corners, running the sewers around on the curbs. But I don't know if we got really good at just hitting down either to right field or to left field. Mainly it was left field. But we never seemed to put out a window or damage a car or anything. Of course, when a car was coming down the street, we'd have to stop playing, move to the side, let the car go through, and start up again. So it was this real start and stop. Not a lot of cars came through. We're in the middle of a mainly community area. When we wanted to play football, we couldn't find a patch of grass big enough that would allow us to play football, so we wound up playing on what would be the parkway. Now, the parkway from the curb to the sidewalk is probably 10 feet. So our football dimensions of what we played football on was just this 10 feet wide field. And it was along a church. You couldn't find ones that had parkways that had trees on because you couldn't play football with trees in them. So there's this one church at the corner that didn't plant any trees, and we used that in playing football. It also meant that when we tackled, sometimes our heads unhelmeted hit the cement sidewalk. So I think I've probably had a lot of early head trauma just by playing, but this is my fond memory. When I saw the question, I tried to think what was special about my life that I look back and go, how did we do that? That was really cool. We all came together at the end of the street and did what we did. So now, Martin, it goes back to you.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is just what you guys are talking about. I mean, Stephanie, I remember Swenson's and my wife and I, even before we were dating, and we just celebrated our 40th, so that dates me a little bit. But and then Little League, oh my God, yeah, I remember that quite a bit. But anyways, I've been trying to decide which one. There's too many memories, but one of them I just now was thinking about was we were digging around in our backyard. And my brother and I, and well, the whole family, I guess, we were renovating some, and we came across a whole nest of these small little garter snakes they were all over the place, and they weren't that long. They were about a foot long or so. But my brother and I, we ended up gathering, 20, 30 of these things, and we ended up taking those in a lunch pail to school. and we ended up selling those suckers. Kids were willing to give up their lunch money for this. We made $1 a piece. We were big entrepreneurs there at fifth and sixth grade. And yeah, probably a lot of parents probably hated us for that, but anyways, yeah, we took all these little snakes, and kids were willing to do whatever it took to get one, but wish we had more.
And anyways, you didn't get any phone calls on that, or what are you doing selling?
Probably my mom did. Yeah, I imagine that. But again, different time, different culture. Yeah, now I would have probably been in jail for it. So,
taking lunch money from kids.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you've got the next question.
So do you think that newer counselors burn out faster now than before? Why or why not?
So, gonna admit here that I don't know the actual answer to this question. I don't know what any statistics would say or anything like that. Burnout is something that I have been wondering about in the counseling field, especially with thinking about like what a conversation I think we had on maybe the last pod or the pod before on finances and what finances can look like for new counselors. I don't think though that has necessarily, that doesn't strike me as something that's gotten worse. That's something that would have struck me as gotten better. My guess is that counselors are probably burning out like a little bit less on the whole as things get better within the entire field. And so it makes me think about like what are some of the contributions to burnout. I think like finances and time and caseload, and what someone's seeing inside of counseling in terms of like what the cases are related to, all can contribute to burnout among other things. I also think that the political climate, I think that there's a lot of like other external and new factors that probably weren't present before. I think about like social media, people's experiences with social media. It's so much easier to hear now about, bad things that are going on in the world, or challenging things that are going on in the world, or emotional things that are going on in the world, or that make people feel a certain way. And that's something that I think probably does contribute more to burnout, is like hearing those things and being more aware of those things. But I also think it could provide some sense of solidarity, some sense of universality inside of the counseling space too. So I'm not sure. My guess is that my guess would be that I think it's reduced a little bit, but I don't know if that significant amount compared to maybe like 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
This was a tough question. I think it's a great question, Steph. It is just a tough question for me to manage. I don't know if I'd be in your shoes and also, in Mitch's shoes of having to be out there as a counselor these days, whether or not I would have had as long a career now as I did back then. I suspect it's harder. I suspect that counselors are burning out more. And then I had to think about, well, how did they burn out back when I was in full practice? Most of the burning out that I saw was counselors, having social and personal relationships with clients to the extent that it was an ethical issue. And that's the ones that I know that I worked with. Those are the ones that we lost. They didn't necessarily leave because they were burning out, or I'm tired, I can't take this anymore, or this is not, I can't pay my bills this way. They were burning out because they were doing unhealthy stuff for themselves or their clients. And that they generally got caught doing that. And that to me was a symptom of impairment with the scenario that they were in. So I don't know if that's happening as much nowadays as I felt it happened when I was full practicing or not. But answer the question, yeah, I think it's tougher. And I think we're seeing counselors having a limited lifespan. I think they graduate, they go into practice, and then somewhere mid-career they maybe decide I want to do something different. And they make that switch. Martin?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of like you. I've been trying to figure out whether it's. I'm going to sort of stick to the middle, but I think I'm going to lean toward it's not necessarily harder. I think every generation, we think it's gotten worse, and it continues to get worse over time. And yet, when we look at certain statistics and certain, I'm right now thinking of the book, for example, The Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker. I mean, things usually get better. And I would say the counseling field has unquestionably got better. I mean, 25 years ago, when I was doing counseling, full time, for example, I mean, and beyond, it was hard to get insurance to even pay for things. So, it was almost like you're going into a mission. You're doing mission work and hoping somebody will pay you. So yeah, the pressures of even feeding your family was different during that time. Whereas now I don't necessarily, you can make a good living at this now. So I think the financial issue is much less. So that would, if that contributes to burnout, I think that's actually better. But again, I think burnout looks different across eras. It comes and it goes. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's worse. I just think it's different. I think what you were saying too, Marty, was related to, well, you said unethical things, and I wouldn't say necessarily that, but I think it's mainly due to the pressures within the personal life and the professional life and how that gets mixed up, and that is always going to contribute it from here and 100 years from now in the same profession. So, and that's the same with most helpers, whether that's clergy or whether that's anything else. I mean, it's the inconsistencies and the almost hypocrisy in some ways of what we preach and what we teach, and sometimes when that doesn't mesh, I think that also contributes to burnout. Now, one thing I would say that burnout is actually worse would be relate to financial debt related to the student loans that are now, I think, getting much worse. And, tuition's just gone crazy over the last, like I said, 25, 30 years too. So in that way, I would say it's worse because there's that debt that's just over top of people, but again, working with 6 to 8 clients a day, you're going to get burnout in that profession, no matter if it's 20 years ago or today. That's hard work. So.
Yeah. Steph?
Yeah, so thank you everybody for those answers. I mean, those were things that I was considering, because I don't know. I don't have any answer necessarily myself, because I think maybe to Martin's point a little bit, to me it seems worse. And at the same time, I didn't grow up and have like those formative years at the same time as the people kind of coming into the field that are newer in the field at this point. So maybe it wouldn't affect me the same way that things affect me now. And then also then you have like the people maybe more like me who it's affecting now more than others just because of how they started too. And you see some changes, and financially, I think maybe overall it's better, but I also think in terms of agency work, at least when I was working at an agency, it was worse over time. And the time was about 2.5 years. And it went from a decent job that you could accomplish with the billable hour requirements in the time that it takes to travel and everything else and the amount of time you could spend with clients to something, a lot more unreasonable. Um, so, and I don't even know what it looks like now. So maybe it got better because it's been 15 years. Hey, it's been 15 years. Um, but I was just kind of curious because I think though to everyone's maybe one of those bigger points is the personal stuff, and if people can, when it starts to, uh, you know, kind of leak out a lot more, then those are the people, and that it probably burnout affects a lot faster, and those people, it's probably more of there's so many of those people every round or every generation of counselors rather than specific things happening around them.
All right.
All right.
Mitch, you've got the
All right.
next question.
Okay. What gadget or piece of technology have you enjoyed using? And you're welcome to mention multiple gadgets as well. But which of them have you enjoyed using the most over the course of your life?
Oh man, I hate this question. Because it's impossible for me to kind of say this is something I've carried through the course of my life. The course of my life with technology is 2 or 3 times the length of the course of your life. So
Oh, I'm sorry. I just mean something that, like, individually, like, you could have had this back in a time or something like that, but not throughout the lifespan. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way.
Well, I'm going to answer the question the way I thought about it.
All right.
I'm not sure what you, but I would say, and I came up with this about a minute ago, and it would have to be some type of messaging or communication. And when I think the back when we were doing internet relay chat back in 1995, it was for me like a miracle that I could be talking to a group of people who I had never met through text messaging and carry on communication that way. And it was just, I just thought it was so cool. And I made some interesting contacts back then that kind of took me down different paths in my life. But it wasn't the kind of fancy bubble emoji thing that was going on now. It was just kind of raw text chat with IRC, or there were some like news groups also where you could just get information. I guess it would be considered like an early Reddit or something like that. But the idea that you could carry on messaging, and one person in particular was Native American husband and wife who I wound up connecting with on a messaging platform, and we just I learned so much from them, and it came at a time when I needed to learn it in my life. So that kind of miracle of messaging anywhere in the world now is, I think, the piece of technology that I stick with, or that I've enjoyed using the most over the course of my life, as your question goes. All right. Now we go to Martin.
Well, again, just like you were struggling, I struggled with this in the sense that I just love technology in every which way. Everything that's new, I'm fascinated with. I've got to learn it. This AI, for example, right now, is just absolutely incredible. I love it. But I think back, when I was 19 years old, I opened up a print shop, and it was West Press Printing, and I remember trying to do text, type to make to print things, and we used an old Croy machine. Again, it was sort of like the cheap version of a real good typesetter, which may cost $20,000 at that time. But anyways, it was like $100 or $1,000 for the machine and a few lettering tools. But anyways, it was sort of nothing more than a stamp machine, like using, um, something labels, that you would put on a sticky things you'd place on a box to note what it is or something like that. But anyways, in 1986, our family bought a Mac Plus, Macintosh Plus, and that just changed everything. I mean, that was just unbelievable at that time. 20 megabyte hard drive. I bought that for $16.99 with a 20 meg hard drive, and I remember later buying a 90 megabyte hard drive for $1,000, thinking that you would never fill that. And of course, it sounds silly now, but again, that changed everything. It really did. Our whole culture has changed. I remember buying a watch during a little after that time. A watch. It was called, I think, the Timex Data, or Timex. It was a Timex watch, a Data something or other, Data Link. That's what it was. And literally, you would grab that watch and you would put it up to the screen on a computer, and it would flash these light at your watch, and it would sync up a calendar. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, that you could have a watch with a calendar on it, but you had to go through this whole rigmarole. It was really a difficult process, but that was the coolest thing at the time. And now here I am with a 43-inch monitor here, another 43 here, and a 30 some here, and with a Mac Studio, and I'm wearing an Apple Watch, got 2 or 3 phones here and my iPad around. Again, things have changed, but again, those little technologies just shaped and changed everything, I think.
So I was thinking about this, and over my lifetime, I've enjoyed gaming, just different ways that it has manifested. From starting from seeing people play Atari. I remember at daycare, like it was at some woman's house, and they had an Atari, so I was watching Pitfall, and I thought that was super cool. But I could never understand how to make it work because my motor skills were not, you know, functional yet. So then my parents, they would never get me a gaming system throughout my entire life, but I was allowed a Commodore 64, which, they were like, you don't need a Nintendo, you have the Commodore. It's like, same thing. But I got a lot of, really awful renditions of Nintendo games on the Commodore 64. Then PlayStation 2. I definitely did not have the gamut of everything. I liked. I'm waiting to get a real good gaming PC, but I have a Switch right now. We did Xbox One. I was not a fan of that. The Switch I've been using because obviously I have less time in my life for gaming now. But I did for PC. I did do some MMORPG games, and those were kind of more fun because you had a social component to them of real people. And like Marty was saying, I thought it was really cool to just talk to people in other countries for free. I think that was just the coolest thing. And Oculus. I enjoyed doing some VR gaming. So I just want to see what's next.
Mitch?
Love everybody's answers here. It's interesting to think about it across the lifespan. And so I think I will go with that way too. Something that I've really enjoyed, sort of like that technological progression of, is audio. And I remember sort of the first thing that I had was sort of this Walkman player with, really flimsy earbuds, and then eventually hopped up to a headset. Then it was a gaming headset, and then eventually finding a pair of studio monitor headphones. And so eventually it's sort of like a rabbit hole with audio, very much like television, of like when we went from standard def to high def, it's the same kind of thing for audio, standard def, high def, and then so on and so forth. There's eventually, I think, some diminishing returns with human hearing, but I don't think I've reached that yet, which is a bit surprising. I remember the first time I put these headphones on and listened to the same songs that I've been listening to my entire life, and I'm like, I don't remember these sounds. This sounds actually like unfamiliar in a good way, of like, oh, I love that I'm hearing such a different range of sounds and more complexity inside of music. And I know I'm sort of the next big purchase that I'm looking at is a pair of like speakers that so I don't have to put something on my head every time that I want to listen to music in the way that I like to. But that's something that I've really enjoyed, that kind of technological journey, because I've seen it in my life, and really just love and have enjoyed that experience and continuing to.
Well, it's an interesting collection of ideas from folks, from games to music to chatting with people worldwide, to the influence of their first computer. Yeah, it's been a long, strange trip with technology. So, of course, I'm going to ask another question related to that. If your search history or your search history on YouTube or YouTube recommendations were made public, what would surprise your students or clients the most?
Oh golly, they probably would assume that I would have Brene Brown lectures, TED talks, things like that from friends, and I do. I mean, I have some of those. That's fine, but I guess I would probably have more Johnny Cash clips, or fainting goats, or sourdough recipes, or something like that. I guess I love religious debates, videos from Dan McClellan, if you've ever heard of him. I love that kind of stuff, and so that would probably surprise them, I guess. Just maybe not, because I'm an open book in my classroom too. So, so.
Steph?
I was thinking what might surprise them is maybe how boring my search history is. I basically go to one YouTube. Her channel's on YouTube. She's a exercise instructor, and I think she's awesome. But she does live shows at 9 every day but Sunday. So I like to go on there. So they'll see a lot of different workouts. Also, maybe just once in a while, I'll go down a rabbit hole with like new music. I don't know if anyone's come across Ren, and that was like something. So you'll see like little pockets of music where I'm just like watching different videos and trying to get to know a new artist or new to me artist. But most of it is just working out. So pretty boring.
Mitch?
So this was a real hard one for me, because I don't feel like I search for too much on YouTube, but something that I did think about was one of the genres that I'm into is Japanese rock and roll and Japanese pop. And I really love watching music videos specifically of that genre, because I feel like I was actually down this rabbit hole just last night. I really love how fun those videos are. Maybe it's just the types of bands that I listen to. I've got probably like a dozen or so that I'm familiar with, and I really love just the vibes of those videos, because I think there's a lot of joy in that music that I listen to in that genre. I listen to other genres too, and those videos wouldn't be as fun or focused on that kind of emotional experience. And so I think that's something for me of like the, it's not my favorite genre. But it is a genre that I listen to. I got into it probably about like 10 years ago and just occasionally have followed some bands since then. So yeah, that would probably be one that someone might not expect with me, I guess.
Well, to answer my own question, if my students saw my YouTube search history, they would most be surprised by probably the two things I use YouTube for, besides solving problems or figuring out how to do tech problems here and there. I'll search for things like that. But outside of that, YouTube, when I'm not watching something on streaming TV, YouTube becomes the place I go to see British quiz shows that are cast with comedians. So Would I Lie to You is one that I've watched where everybody has to try and guess whether this story is true or a lie. And it's all comedians, so it's not just interesting what they come up with. It's also the interesting how they respond to each other and how humorous they are in responding to each other. Taskmaster, of course, I've mentioned that before. It's a perfect example of the kind of stuff on Channel 4 that is just these quiz shows with comedians. 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. It's a little bit cheekier and involves math and language, and but it's a very strange but funny British program. And then the great the Big Fat Quiz is also basically a quiz in different categories of what happened on that year, with comedians paired up in teams to do that. So folks would be surprised how much of that shows up in my YouTube search, followed by 10 songs from 1975 that you'll never hear again. Those kinds of weird slammed together YouTube videos. I don't know. I'm a sucker for those. They pull me in, and it's like, or facts you didn't know about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I'm looking at it. It's 7 minutes. Okay, you got me. Those kinds of music history, music stuff. And part of it is testing whether I knew that or not because of involvement in commercial radio and rock radio. So it's always that area. I'm not going to go back and look at stuff on hip hop. That was not my thing. But when it has those kind of music lists and stuff like that, then yeah, I'll check it out. So that's interesting. All interesting responses, and now people know the secret, dirty, nasty parts of our YouTube feeds. Final shot question. Your walk-up song for the classroom or presenting. So imagine yourself, you're walking into a classroom or you're walking to some professional presentation. What's your walk-up song? Martin, you're first on this one.
This one was harder for me than any of them. I'll be honest. I really just could not figure it out. So anyways, but closest thing I came back to with coming from sort of Appalachia culture, I said, Take Me Home, Country Roads. I thought that would be the one I would go with, but that's about all I could do.
Okay, Steph.
Hard question. It's not Bowie, but I chose Dare by Gorillaz.
Oh, okay.
It's Dare. Woo. Okay.
Mitch.
I feel like this question is giving me the same vibes where I don't know what song to pick for karaoke, so I choose Tequila, so I'm going to just choose Tequila.
Well, this question I came up with as a final shot question. I spent all day doing errands, running around in the car by myself, asking the S lady, as you call her, not to trigger other people's devices, to play songs for me. And so I have a whole list, but what first came out was Thunderstruck by AC/DC. That's a walk-up song for a classroom. Then I went through Talking Heads phase and I started, Naive Melody, This Must Be the Place, and then I Zimbra and Life During Wartime, for the more paranoid kinds of classes or students that you walk into. And then I started doing Polyphonic Spree, which I mentioned in a previous show episode about, what is it, Light and Day, I think is the song. And so I was just full of songs all day long trying to figure out one. So I'm going to go back to AC/DC, Thunderstruck. So
That's very cool.
Maybe some of our listeners have their own walk-up songs that they'd like to do. It's kind of a crossover for me because being a baseball fan, they all have walk-up songs now. So I thought it would be fun to do that for the classroom with it. So maybe we don't know what your walk-up song is, but we hope you'll continue to join us on Circular Firing Squad. Want to thank the squad. We had Martin, Wesley, Mitch, and Stephanie join us tonight as part of the Circular Firing Squad. So thanks for joining us. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on thepodtalk.net. Our website is thepodtalk.net. You can find out about all the projects that we do there in terms of podcasts and other kinds of things. Learn more about Circular Firing Squad. Our theme music is from the Naja Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready? Fire.